Jeremy, man, thanks so much for coming on the show here today. Really excited to have you on and chat a little bit. Could you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, Mike, thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be on, especially with the lineup of guests you've had. It's always an honor to join that sort of lineup.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah. So going back, man, I'm originally from England. Moved over from the UK after my undergrad in 2003, and then from there started my master's over here. Got invited for my PhD, and one thing leads to another. You should have been here for a year to do your master's, and end up here, 21 years later.
20 years, yeah.
Here we are, yeah. So it's great. During my grad school, actually, the day I arrived in the States, I met my wife.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, first person I met.
Crazy.
Put my bags down.
Really?
Yeah, Michelle knocks on the door.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah. Oh man, so that gets even crazier. So let's see, my dad moved over to the States.
Yeah.
And he ended up settling in Nashville and bought this beautiful property just outside of Nashville in Lebanon, Tennessee. It turns out that's the house Michelle grew up in. And
shut up.
Yeah, man. And
that's
so
crazy.
She still had a house on the property that she was in the process of selling.
Okay.
And so they met, and my dad was going to dog sit for her one weekend. And that's the weekend I arrived. So yeah, this beautiful girl knocks on the door, and in comes the dog, and there we go.
That's like divine intervention, man.
Yeah.
Like the skies open up, and good for
Leicester,
you, man.
England to Lebanon, Tennessee, and that's where you meet your wife day one.
Wow, that's crazy, man. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And talk to me, I'm always interested in people's backstories. So what got you into the world of physical preparation, sport, whatever, brought you into this space?
Yeah. So rugby, basically.
Okay.
So I started playing at 4 years old.
Oh my.
Yeah, so really early got into it, started playing all the way up through the youth sort of setup and into, I would say I probably got to sort of NFL practice squad before gravity really and physics really started taking over. So when the guys in your position are sort of 6'3", 6'4", 240 at 5'11", 5'11", I'm more like 5'9".
Yeah.
So at 5'9", then you start just getting absolutely run over, right? And these guys can do everything you can do. Yeah. But I've had this passion for the human body, the way education works in the UK. I started taking anatomy and physiology when we're in high school, so we're talking 15 years old. Sure. And so I'm in this class and we're taking a test, and you just have one of those moments where it just sort of comes over you that, man, I just get this.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, for sure.
And so we're studying the muscular system and just really resonated with everything I was doing, both on the field, and we'd started training. That's when we just started lifting weights and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And really fell in love with it. So that thirst for knowledge really just drove me up to university in the north of England, carried on playing rugby, and then got back from uni after I finished my undergrad and was working as a personal trainer, and just thought, man, there's got to be more to this. There's got to be more.
Yeah.
You've reached that point.
For sure.
You're as smart as you'll ever be when you finish your undergrad. You're just like an absolute genius.
Yes.
And then, man, I got this opportunity to come over. My dad said, well, there's a master's program at the university near us, Middle Tennessee State. And so got that opportunity, came over, started the master's, and it just went really well. And they invited me back to stay on and do the PhD, and just more and more and more knowledge, more exposure to athletes. Because you got to think rugby didn't turn professional in it really globally until 95. So around 2003, we were just getting our first strength coaches.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't a profession back home yet. It was something I knew I wanted to do with my life, but there wasn't really a pathway. So then you come over to the States and you walk into Middle Tennessee, has this weight room it's a small college. Right? There's nobody watching the games, but man, they got this weight room like nothing I've ever seen.
Yep.
And you just got like squat racks going on for miles. You got all this open space. You've got wave after wave of athlete coming in. You're like, oh man, now I can have a career, right? So it really clicked at that point when I got here into grad school, and I was really able to embrace that, and drive my studies down that athlete performance route.
I love it.
Yeah, and then quickly got into high performance sport. So it was from there, it was to USA Rugby, into some private practice physical therapy, into UCSB as the head strength coach, then into the Nets, then into the Maple Leafs as performance director, and the Ducks, then NYCFC. And so it just like this career you look back on, you're just like, holy crap, like how did that happen?
Right.
It's just unbelievable.
Who were you studying under at Middle Tennessee? Who was there?
So Jen Caputo and Richard Farley were the two people really heading up the exercise science department there.
Okay. And what were you studying at the time? Like you said, you went on and did a PhD. What were you diving into?
Yeah, my PhD was human performance, and we got into sort of reactive agility. So right at that intersection between biomechanics and neuroscience.
Yes.
So what I was looking at was a number of things. What separated elite from sub-elite performers? And also, as we added a reactive element to an agility program, did people's mechanics change? So did we have to then sort of coach mechanics once they, I guess, both for healthy and rehabbing athletes, do you have to put extra emphasis onto mechanics as you put them back into that reactive environment?
Interesting. Yeah, I remember, I don't know if it was your research, but I just remember when people started diving into this space and they were like, look, if you put like high level college versus professionals, like a lot of the physical tools are almost the same, but
100%.
the perception side of it, the pros, they're just like their processing speed. It's like the fastest supercomputer you can imagine, right? They just process things so much faster.
Exactly. But that was the exact differentiator. It was, and this is still how I view it now, and how it guided my career a lot, was physical attributes are entry level, right? You have to be fit enough, strong enough, fast enough. More isn't necessarily better. And that really guided me in a number of ways. When we'd go to the combine, all the strength coaches fall in love with the guy who can touch the top of the building, when he's doing his vertical jump, bench a house. And particularly in hockey, I found this. When you had a guy who was coming in at 17, 18 years old to the draft, and he was a man, he had better already be an elite player. We drafted Austin Matthews, for example. He's a man at 18, but he's got a skill set to be a top 1 or 2 player in the NHL. If you don't have that skill set, chances are if you are that physical in a physical sport, you've only ever had to use that physicality. You never had to develop your skill. Well, now you go into the big league and everybody can do that. So now there's nothing special about you, and those guys always peter out. And we see it in the NBA with the guy who could, he'd come to the second round draft pick camp and he could jump over everyone, and he was just spectacular dunks. He's the guy that you got to put the vertex up on stilts for, because he's maxing it out, right? And everyone's like, oh my God. But then it's well, you know who else can do that? It's LeBron. Right? But LeBron can also hit you with a jump shot. Right. So now what have you got? Right. What's your second option? And we saw that over and over again throughout our career, building these athletes and talking to GMs about who we should pick.
I love it. Man, there's so many things I want to talk to you about today. And just to give the listeners a little context, who put us in touch? Was it Josh Bonatal?
Yeah, Josh. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So Josh Bonatal sends me this text, and like everything Josh does, it's kind of long. And he's like, hey, you need to connect with this guy. I think you'll enjoy it. So I don't always do this, but you and I jumped on a call before we did this.
Yeah.
And this is a couple months ago now. And we literally talked, I think, for an hour.
Right.
Like never talked before. And I'm like, okay, no, this guy's going to be amazing. So all the questions I have, I want to start really broad, as I tend to do, and then we'll kind of narrow down.
Brilliant.
But one of the things that I've done for close to a decade now is I always refer to people as athletes, right? Obviously athletes are athletes, but even our Gen Pop clients, I like to refer to them as athletes. And man, I got a lot of pushback from this early on. People are like, well, I never played sports, or I don't think of myself as an athlete. I'm like, no, you're an athlete in your own game of life, right? And trying to instill this mindset of we train all physical properties, right? Speed, strength, power, conditioning, they're all important. But you've got a really unique space, and we'll let you talk about that. I would love to hear what are some of the parallels between training pro athletes, which you've done for a number of years, and training for longevity. Yeah.
This has been an unbelievable transition for me. Really interesting. And there's been parallels both systemically in what I've seen in pro sport, as well as down to the individual and the traits that we train. my role became in sport really transitioning organizations from reactive athlete gets hurt, we rehab them processes where you've got your silos of sports medicine, strength conditioning, data coming along sort of later. And then how do we take them to a proactive injury prevention model where everything's under one roof? We're one department. Yes. It's not separate. It's all one spectrum. How are we working with the athlete on that one spectrum of intensity from the doctor's office to a playoff game when we're up here and working with the athlete?
Yeah.
Zoom out now, I come out of sport and we see the exact same thing. Exact same problem exists in healthcare. You've got all your providers and specialties all in different spots. Healthcare has sort of been co-opted by medical care, right? So now you're taking medical and you're making it both superior to and separate from all of your lifestyle interventions. But just the same as in sport, these are the things that keep you healthy, keep you alive.
Right.
These interventions, getting strong, having a great diet, doing your rehab, finishing your rehab, working together, those are the things that kept our athletes healthy. You know, we built a system with the Maple Leafs that went 3.5 years with no injuries.
That's amazing.
Through this stuff, right? Not all the fancy stuff that you think it's going to be, not the wearables, not, this and that. They were a part of a complement to being really strong, right?
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, sure.
Having really good therapists.
Yep.
So that's the problem we're looking to solve out here again, right? It's the same systemic problem. How do we bring everything in together? How do we apply the same principles of injury prevention where we look at what are the risk factors? Let's measure them early in healthy athletes. Because that was the thing. We developed them actually as clearance from rehab programs.
Yeah.
And then we thought, well, hang on a minute. How many of our healthy guys could pass these? And we retested all the healthy guys to see if they were qualified to leave rehab. About 50% wouldn't.
Yes.
So we immediately know these guys are at risk of an adductor injury, for example, in hockey.
Yep.
And so we have to put them on the same process as the rehab guy and then regularly monitor that process in order to ensure that we'd move those guys in the right way. The other guys that were good weren't progressing down as the season wore on. So that same thinking, measure things that are risk factors and monitor them regularly and intervene. Why can't we apply that to every other facet of health?
Yep.
Right. First of all, do you need a knee replacement, a hip replacement? We've got people coming out and rehabbing hamstrings and all these stuff that we get in the general population as well. Look at all the injuries in pickleball, for example, torn Achilles, all these things.
Yeah.
Now we start seeing, wait, how is the general population person that wants to go play pickle different than your athlete?
Thank you.
Same injuries.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
Same demands.
Yes.
Sure, they're not on the world tour, of pickleball.
Right.
But they still want to go out and
doing it
perform
every
well.
weekend.
Yeah, right.
They're doing it every weekend for hours on end.
Exactly. Yes. So do we want to know if that Achilles is functioning well? Right? Probably.
Yes.
So on a musculoskeletal level, it's the exact same system. We need to build people for the demands of what they love doing. Could be hiking, could be pickle, could be road cycling. Doesn't matter. We know those demands. We can come downstream, use those same techniques, measure all the variables that go into that, and put them on a plan to systematically and safely move them in that direction.
Yes.
But then we can also apply that to other chronic diseases. We know what risk factors are, what biomarkers to measure for diabetes. We know there are screening tools for cancer.
Yep.
All of these things, if we measure early and monitor and have a multidisciplinary group that we surround these people with, we can start enacting those exact same principles between general population and professional athletes. And it just seems logical because we've been in the environment, right? But it's very counterintuitive, to people who have been out in the real world. I've got my doctor.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we need to expand that set of services a little bit.
Yes. So I've used this point a couple of times now, but I was helping a guy one of my guys rehab an Achilles tear a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the criteria in the return to play process is 5 sets of 25 body weight calf raises.
Right.
And it comes back to that point of, can our healthy guys do that? Because I immediately had this thought of, number one, this is really hard. Yeah. Number two, if you're using a metronome and you're dialing all these pieces in, it's even harder.
Right.
So yeah, this isn't immediately like a criteria. Like now this isn't just for Ed to get him back. It's like, hey, can all of my guys do that?
Yes.
And you're absolutely right. If they can't, then that's something that we need to bake into their program and get that up to snuff. So I love that. But I think it's just such a unique viewpoint because when you explain it, it makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. But most people haven't thought about it in this realm, right? Or at least not in regards to general fitness. We're not keeping tabs on. You and I talked about this. Like, what is their quad strength? You know, VO2 max is one, but like, what is their quad strength? What is their VO2 max? Because these are all things that we can track and monitor and measure that we know make an impact on somebody's health and performance.
Right. Well, and look at I look at grip strength. You know, we measure that a lot. You know, huge marker, as we know, right? We had one guy. He entered our program late 60s, and he had all these hand surgeries. And rehab out in the wild is basically just, did it stop hurting? Okay, good. You can go home.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And this guy, you know, absolute. He's conquered the world, right? Mm-hmm. As far as industry goes, you know, he's just built from nothing up to, you know, he'll never want for anything. But one of the things he said to me is like, I'm having trouble holding my knife and fork.
My gosh.
Right. And you got this guy.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Yeah. His whole life, he's just conquered everything. He's heli skiing. He's doing road cycling, all this stuff. And he's getting to the point where he can't hold his knife and fork. And it's like, what's his trajectory from there?
Yeah.
Right. Because now he's got to stop doing other stuff. Stop playing pickle, stop playing tennis because he can't hold the racket.
Yes.
And so this, again, it's where that athlete mentality where we've got to return to performance and not just get out of pain and stop doing the things you love.
Yes.
And by the way, that's why we chose vitality and not longevity. We can have him live forever.
Yeah.
But if he can't do all these things and be around his friends and compete and, you know, be out in the world doing the stuff he loves because his hands are why he's becoming frail.
Yeah.
So you put him on like a trajectory to finish that rehab. And we've seen like almost a 50% improvement in his grip strength and his hand function. And these things, again, by being strong, really building a robust system around these markers that we know are risk factors. Because how can his shoulders get strong if he can't hold anything in his hands?
Absolutely.
Right? So it's all of this whole upper body is dependent on him being able to function here.
Yeah, I love it. And this is something Peter Attia talked about in his book.
Correct.
And he's really big on, you know, for many, many years now, like the discussion has revolved around lifespan, right? And that's great, right? I think if we could all say, all things being equal, if we can live longer, that's great. But then the way he kind of frames it is, okay, that's fine. But what if you live longer, but the quality of your life isn't what you want it to be for the last 20 to 30 years?
That's
so
exactly
it's shifting this emphasis from just purely lifespan to, he would describe it as health span.
Exactly right.
And I love that because it's quality of life, right? Yes, we would all love to live longer as long as we assume the quality stays high as well. And I think that's what you're describing.
That's exactly what we're describing. And beyond the medical, right? Beyond just focusing on avoiding the chronic diseases that obviously compromise that quality of life. But let's go downstream as to what actually causes that descent into chronic disease. And it's loss of physical activity. So as soon as we stop moving, all of our systems start descending into the disease states.
Yes.
So if we can prevent injuries, which cause extended periods of time where you're down and out, then we can get you off the couch and we can keep you working at a high level. So how we view it is if we focus on vitality first, your ability to do the things you love will get longevity. Right? And that's the same way we did with athletes. If we keep them healthy, if we keep them injury-free, we extend their career. Because we knew in sport, the number one predictor of injury was previous injury. So we've got to get you out of that cycle and get you strong and robust so that you can keep going. And then it's consistency.
Yeah.
The longer we can do this, the less we have to worry about the disease states.
I love it. Okay, so before the show, we were going back and forth on email. And one of the things that you mentioned was that executives really need to think of themselves as high-performance athletes.
Correct.
I couldn't agree more. But I would love to hear you kind of fill in the gaps. Why do you feel like that's so important?
Yeah, this for me is just so important because, and I think this is the case for all high performers, right? Think about all these fields where it doesn't matter if it's your armed services, your police force, your first responders, your executives, anyone who is a high performer. How your body functions directly impacts your performance in not only your career, but with your family and with this extended area that you interact with the world.
Yes.
We think about the glorification of overwork, sleep. We're just not sleeping. I'm
Team no
working
sleep.
extra hours. Right. I'm putting everything else behind my career. But think about how that plays out. You physically can't be at your best. You physically can't. Yeah. And so we're leaving so much on the table by not treating our body like a high performance machine, essentially. With athletes, when we talk about rest, everyone thinks, oh yeah, I'll go into active recovery and this and that. No, they sleep. On a day off, they might not get out of bed, right?
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
It's rest.
Yeah.
Right? We work really hard here, we recover and we rest here. That allows them to perform at this elite level. Athletes know that sleep is the number one performance enhancer known to man.
Yeah.
If you're a trader, if you're a hedge fund manager, you're a top CEO, your decision-making speed, which is the first thing to go if you're sleep deprived, you're essentially drunk if you're sleep deprived.
Yeah.
It's the first thing to go. So if you're chronically sleep deprived now, how can you perform at your best and make the decision that your station, that your career requires you to make? And even if you can maintain that through a mix of caffeine and whatever else you do to stay up there, how can you then go home and be at your best with your kids?
For sure.
How can you have that bandwidth when you walk in and you've got 5 kids and they're all screaming?
Yes.
Right. And how do you not just blow up at that point? How do you maintain that mental resilience where you've got the bandwidth to operate within your family as you would hope you'd operate within your career and all the other aspects of life? Yeah. So there's that element of it's just human performance. Just like we ask the athletes to do every night, we're actually asking you to do it more. Mm-hmm. So how you're hydrated, how you're fueling, how you're fueling the brain and the body, how you're training. Think about exercise, how much exercise boosts brain function. Yep. Right? Lifting weights, immense for the brain. And we don't ever think about that. We think about cardiovascular training being good for the brain. But lifting weights might even be better. Yeah. Right? So all of these factors that go into human performance and preparing professional athletes also play into how you perform as an executive or as essentially a cognitive athlete. Mm-hmm. Right? You're always having to be at your best and be sharp and really perform on top of your game.
So the way I think about this, and whether it's an athlete, an executive, I just think of it as anybody that wants to be a high performer, period. Right?
Exactly right.
Whatever that means to you, right? Like if you're a janitor and you want to be the best janitor and perform at a high level, you need to think of yourself in this way. A couple of things while you were talking that I immediately thought of. Number one, Bill Sands, who was like the recovery director, I think forever at the USOC or something like that. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. He did, I think, years of research on recovery and, all the modalities, all the tools, all the toys. And he kept coming back to the 3 that were most impactful. Nutrition. You know this? Yeah. Nutrition, sleep, and compression. Yeah. Like 3 of the most basic things, but nutrition and sleep, those are like the main 2. So that was one. And then the other thing that I always think of, and I like to try and make things simple and I like analogies and pictures. Yeah. And so one of the things I kind of did years ago was like these concentric circles, right? In the middle concentric circle was me, right? And so if I take care of me, then the next concentric circle, which is my family, right?
Yeah.
My wife, my kids, creatures that run around our house for
Yeah.
free,
Yeah.
like they're positively impacted. And then the people that I work with, it's like you have to take care of yourself
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
And I think too often, like you said, it's everything else first, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's my work, it's my
Mm-hmm.
job, it's not sleeping because I have to do these things versus no, if you start with yourself first, then all those circles get
Yeah.
bigger and more robust as a result.
Exactly. And I think there's both conditioning in the workplace, societal maybe, that it can feel selfish
Yes.
to have
Absolutely.
a high performing career. Both then, okay, you're going to take time out of the day when you could be working to do this, and time that isn't with your family to do this.
Yes.
So if you're away a lot here for your career, you need to be at home every other minute. But that's where both end up being really poor.
Absolutely.
Right? You can't
Absolutely.
do either of them well. And so being able to step out and take that time, mums, dads, both, it's not, this is not a male oriented thing. Having the permission from your partner to take that hour, go to the gym, go play tennis, go be social with another group of people, that for me is where vitality can really increase, and you can pour that back into both other arenas.
Yeah. It seems counterintuitive, but by expending that energy, it gives you more energy. Right? Like, you know as well as I do, you have a great workout, right? Whether it's lifting weights, a good run, a good bike, immediately the endorphins are there, and now you have this second wind, so to speak, of, oh man, now I'm a better parent, right? I've got more energy for my kids. But I think you make a great point there, and that's something that it can feel selfish initially, but you're absolutely right. What ends up happening is if you don't do that, you're at work and you're thinking about the things that you should be doing for yourself or at home. So you're like half at work. And then when you get home, you're thinking about all the stuff you should have done for yourself or you should have done at work. So you're not doing either at a high level.
Right.
And that's not a good place to be.
No, and you're carrying all that from work to home.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
If you're frustrated leaving work and you come in and everybody's screaming and everything's high energy and going, like, how do you break that? You need a buffer.
Yes.
And expending that energy is where you can process some of that, right? Away from the family. Whether it's a walk around the neighborhood, whether it's a quick hike on the way home, a quick lift, a spin class, doesn't matter. And the key with recovery is do you think it's going to help you recover?
Yes. Yes.
Perception. Outside of sleep and food, everything else, like, do you feel like it helps? Yep. Okay, then it helps.
Right.
That's it. Right?
Yeah.
So have them do that. Anybody, just get a break doing what you like, and you'll go into home, or go the other way, you'll feel better.
Yeah. I love it. Okay. So for us that are stateside, I know there's a lot of international listeners, but if you are here in the U.S., I think a lot of us can agree that healthcare in the U.S. probably needs some work for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah. But
I would love to hear how we can take this high performance model and apply it to fixing, or at the very least improving, healthcare here in the States.
Yeah, we're working on that right now in regards to building a model, repurposing a model from pro sport, and creating awareness. Right? That's the first thing we have to do, is show that there's another way to do it. We have to show that it's effective. We have to show that it will save the insurance companies money. That there's going to be, basically what we have to do is speak to the incentives that are currently involved in this industry. And it is an industry, right?
Yeah, for sure.
If you've got hundreds of billions of dollars here, can you disrupt that industry by saying, well, you could make $1 million instead of $100 billion, but everyone will feel great. Well,
yeah,
that's not how that's going to work.
Incentives are not there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we got to show them, if we do this, it is cheaper to identify and treat cancer early versus catch it late.
Yes.
Right? It's going to be cheaper. Way better for people as well. If we can put people into appropriate physical therapy that goes all the way from injury or before injury, sorry, all the way up through a return to performance, that's cheaper than doing a knee replacement, partially rehabbing, having to go back in and redo the
Fix
work,
it.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Over and over. That spiral that people then get into. What's the
Yes.
cost of that being the first sort of penny to drop, and then their big stepwise decreases from there as these other injuries come up and every capacity starts to drop. Now we're into our chronic disease spiral. So for me, it's about how do we initially demonstrate that? It's entirely outside of the insurance model right now.
Yeah.
So
For sure.
awareness and demand creates more pressure for this to be democratized. And we're seeing that more and more with sports technologies coming out of sport into the general population, where we can democratize some of the ways that we've been monitoring, for example. You know, we've gone from 3D motion capture with 16 camera systems that it's $100,000 down to a single camera solution on your phone for motion capture.
Yeah.
Right. So can we repurpose some of that stuff we would do with athletes into your phone? And now everybody can have it.
Right.
So I think there's a bunch of ways that we need to go about this, but awareness has to be number one, that there is a different way we can do this. It is not inevitable that you get weaker, get sicker, and just decline.
Right.
We can work together as a system. That's why we chose Vitality Collective, because it's not me doing this. It's our whole team of multidisciplinary professionals. And who do you need and when?
Yeah.
Everything working together, everything complementary, everything as one system, treating you as a human system, not a shoulder. How does that fit into everything else? And how do we guide you through that process where you don't have to get to the point where you're out for 3 months? Now we got to try and rebuild you.
Yeah.
Because that's a big job when you're 70, 75 years old.
For sure. For sure. Okay. So now I didn't want to start with this because I wanted to get some of this other stuff out first, but I would love to hear, how did you go from high performance sport, right?
Yeah.
And let's see, NHL,
Yeah.
NBA,
Yeah.
MLS, right? So you saw all these different realms. What made you want to shift gears and do what you're doing now? Like, what shifted? And maybe just talk to us a little bit about the starting point for that. Because look, this is not like a small goal.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm going to go start a private clinic and I'm going to train, athletes on the side. This is like, I want to revolutionize healthcare.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that process.
I've never been good at small goals.
Yeah.
Like, I think I struggled back in the UK because there's a small mindset. You sort of have your lot. You're born into this, whether it's socioeconomic group. You're like, this is sort of who you are, and you go along and you fulfill that role.
Yep.
And I really struggled with that. And then getting to the States was like, okay, I can think bigger, do more, achieve more. Like in the UK, you say, okay, I'm going to change healthcare. Okay, no, you're not. Come on. Right here, they're like, wow, yeah, you should do that.
Yeah.
Right. Like, here's how you could raise money to do that. Here's how you could do this. Here's how you could do that. Right. It's a real different mindset. But I think once I get into a system, my vision sort of zooms out and I see the whole system. Yeah. And I start seeing more and more and more things that can influence it. And that happened in sport, in my journey when I got into sport. And I couldn't believe the silos that still existed within professional sport.
Yeah.
And at every stop, I found that at some point, I came up against the constraints of the organization. Sort of whoever was most comfortable with expansion, you would expand to their comfort, and then they'd sort of put the brakes on.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, so I can go to here in college. Okay, you go to NBA, you got more resources, right? So now you can expand it a little bit more.
Yeah.
But we're kind of comfortable with the way it is. And then we went to Toronto, and they wanted to really revamp their whole human performance system. So now I'm in charge of the whole system, everything that touches the athletes. But then you're still in hockey in a mindset where, well, yeah, but we're comfortable with hockey how it is. You've gone sort of as far as you can here.
Yeah, sure.
And you keep sort of repeating that. And I think it just got to the point where I'd been in it long enough that I was starting to repeat the same role. And I
Yeah.
love building stuff. I just love
Right.
building stuff. And so, but building the same thing 3 times, you're having the same arguments 10 years after
Yeah.
you were first having them,
Yeah.
that
Sure.
got a little old, right? Because it
Right.
just seemed so intuitive to me at that point. Like, of course, we need a nutritionist. Why are we talking about this? And so actually we stopped here in Santa Barbara on a preseason trip with New York City. And I went on a hike with a buddy. We were up the top of the mountains. I'm sitting there and it was beautiful. Like not a cloud in the sky. You see all the way down through the town and into the Pacific Ocean. You got
Oh, wow.
you've got the Channel Islands off in the distance. And I'm just like, oh my God, what am I doing? Right?
Right.
Why am I not doing this every day for number one, right?
Right.
You start thinking about vitality and you start feeling your own mortality, right? It's that midlife period
Absolutely.
that you
Yeah.
enter where you start questioning some of what you're doing, not thrilled with where your career's at, even though you've sort of reached as far as you can go in your domain. And like there has to be a way to take the brakes off,
Yeah.
right? To take the constraints off. And for Michelle and I, that was for us to build the system.
Yeah.
So get out, build the system how we knew it needed to be built, whichever direction we wanted to go. There wasn't going to be a coach or a GM or an owner that said, we're not really comfortable with that.
Right.
Right. So we could determine how this human performance system was going to be built. And then as we started living in that for a little bit, you start looking around and realizing that the constraints are now the healthcare system.
Yes.
And that people are so poorly treated.
Mm.
I mean, it's so poor. People's experience within the healthcare system, and the people who are coming to us now, a lot of my one-on-one clients are people who they've started this spiral, right?
Yeah.
They were fit and healthy and athletic, and then it was a knee, then it was their hands, then it was their hip, their back, right? And they've never really rehabbed any of them. So a lot of people that need my expertise in unwinding that.
Yep.
And even the group speaking events that I'm at are how do we think about applying athletic performance to longevity?
Yeah.
Right? Is there a system that people just in their own life can start thinking about, talking to their doctor about, connecting their doctor and their trainer? You know, all these things that are like, how can we just get more and more people aware that these things exist already in the world? It's just a very closed shop.
Yes.
Right? You don't have access to it. So we're now taking that and giving people access to it for the first time.
No, that's so cool. So right now, the way the current medical model works is your knee hurts, your back hurts, you're having chest pain. You go to a doctor, right? It's totally reactive.
Right.
Hey, I'm going to go to the doctor. They're going to give me a diagnosis, and they're either going to give me a medicine or they're going to prescribe physical therapy, surgery, whatever. We kind of know what the process looks like.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what your process looks like, the way you're reimagining this, and the way, hey, I'm 50, right? Well, I'm 46. This is pretty close. Let's say I come to you. I am pretty healthy, but I don't want all this stuff to happen.
Yeah.
So what does it look like now? If I say, Jeremy, take me through the whole process. What does it look like?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. So how it looks now, feeling great, no problems. And this is where it started with the athletes. None of them knew what the hell we were doing. Like, why do I have to have an appointment at the PT every week? Right? There's nothing wrong with me. So the first thing we do, extensive history questionnaire, family, even into mental, spiritual, emotional. We'll get into our intelligent training questionnaires, our sort of physical therapy, rehab, really digging into medical history. So we have a picture of the context that you come into us with, right? Any past injuries, any past surgeries that have happened. Then we go through our full musculoskeletal screen, right? So we go joint by joint through the body. We start looking at balance either side of a joint. We start looking at asymmetry side to side. And we start looking at, are you above certain thresholds that we know are indicative of injury if you're below them?
Yep.
The number one predictor for me of you're about to get injured is, are you weak? Right. And so we need to make sure everybody's above a certain threshold. Then you'll see our physical therapist and we'll go joint by joint now. And again, is there a restriction sort of at the joint level? Right. So there'll be some restrictions that, okay, this is a strength or just a mobility issue, but it might be the joint or the capsule. So you need an expert to get in and actually move that joint, because no amount of external rotator exercise is going to help you if it's at the joint level.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So where are your restrictions? You won't be aware of these yet, because slowly over time, we start shrinking our world to meet our new capabilities.
Yeah.
Right. It pinches a little bit when I reach overhead. And so I hike my shoulder and I get a stool.
Yeah.
Right. And it's these patterns that isn't an issue until it's an issue.
Right. Yeah, right? Absolutely. I love it.
And so we see that and we start treating it before it hurts. We start correcting the imbalances before they hurt, get you above strength levels before you blow out your Achilles playing pickleball.
Yep.
And we keep you in this performance training cycle. So while all of that stuff's going on, we're also doing the peace of mind stuff. So an extensive cancer screening process, extensive blood work, extensive cardiovascular screening, both VO2 max as well as coronary calcium and all your blood lipid scores, all that sort of stuff. So all of that is peace of mind. It's not going to take you down today.
Right.
But it puts us in a cadence of now, okay, we got the all clear from cancer with 5 different cancer screens that we've stacked together. Now that we know if next year we screen you and we find a positive result, it's not stage 4 or 5, right? Because we know it wasn't present last year.
Yes.
Right. If we wait until you've got symptoms, now it's almost too late, or it's going to be so toxic for us to treat that it's going to take a massive toll on you.
Yes.
So that medical side is really peace of mind, but the pillars, the foundation is physically active. Are we preventing injury? Are we going to make sure that this doesn't turn into a neck and a shoulder rotator cuff tear when you're trying to put your stuff in the overhead locker on the plane, right?
Yeah.
That's where we're going with you when you come to us. It's what are your current susceptibilities to future injury? What's the thing that's going to drop that causes every system to have a stepwise decrease? Because when you're laid up rehabbing your shoulder, it's 3 months and it's not just your shoulder. Now you're not squatting, you're not doing pull-ups, you're not doing push-ups, you're not on the bike, you're not out for a run. So cardiovascular fitness drops, everything. And again, that first one's not a problem, right? But then that hip you've been having a problem with for a while is so much weaker. Now you go play pickle, and your hip collapses. Now we've torn the labrum.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
And now everything takes another drop.
Yep.
Now you get to the point where you get COVID and you can't fight it because your VO2 max has dropped so low, you can't provide the energy to your immune system.
Yeah.
Like this is the spiral where you draw a line from a pain-free shoulder that doesn't function well.
Yeah.
To a pretty dire straits. And I actually just saw it in a friend like 3 months ago in his 70s, and he literally went from being a practicing medical professional to being in a hospital bed delirious with sepsis, like in 3 months.
Oh my gosh.
Unbelievable.
That's crazy. Yeah.
It's crazy. Unbelievable.
But what you're describing, I see this all the time because, as you know, very few pro athletes are 100% healthy all the time, right? There's always something we're rehabbing, cleaning up, getting back to baseline.
Yes.
But what you just described is if you're not in that space all the time, maybe you're, I don't want to say oblivious to it, but it's just not on your radar. But you know as well as I do, somebody's got a knee thing. Well, now we're rehabbing the knee thing, but that limits a lot of other things that we can do, right? Mm-hmm. Well, now we're not running for conditioning.
Right.
Now we're not, so like more things are limited. And so it's that much harder to keep your body comp in check, to keep your cardiovascular fitness up. But you're just describing this in more of a gin pop scenario. Exactly. And I don't think a lot of trainers, and again, this isn't a knock, It's just
No.
you don't think of it in this way.
Yeah.
Like you don't think about how this one shoulder thing that your client had a year ago is now negatively impacting everything else in their life. So I love that.
Yeah, it's setting them up for the next thing.
Yes.
Right. With load management, we talk about that a ton, right? In sport, and it's become a bit of a bit overplayed in sport. Ultimately, what it does is it gives you each athlete's susceptibility to injury. Which part of them is going to break down if we exceed their capacity?
Yes.
Right. And if we keep dropping their capacity, it's going to be easier and easier and easier for them to get hurt, because that thing that fatigues and breaks that's going to happen at a lower and lower level.
Yes.
So we're just continually trying to eliminate those things that are going to cause that next drop.
Yep. I love it. So when we chatted before, one of the things you were like literally breaking all this down. We had a discussion similar to this, but then I just asked you, like, dude, just logistically, how are you pulling this off? Because it's not like you're running all their labs and doing all their tests. Like you've got a team.
Yeah.
So talk to me about just pulling all of these providers together, because this is not commonplace, as I'm sure you know, right?
Yeah.
They're used to reactive medicine, and now you're talking about, no, I want to get on top of this. Just talk to me about getting these people under your umbrella and what that process is like.
Yeah. I mean, we're a year in, and we're still refining the processes, because it is such a new way of doing things, as you allude to, right? You're taking people from one system to another. Each person within their system, like, everybody's sick of healthcare.
Yeah.
There's nobody working in anything related to healthcare where they're not sick of it, either as a patient or a provider.
Yes.
Right. And the current system is no knock on any provider. It's just logistically not set up for them to practice the way they got into their profession to practice.
Yes.
No doctor got into the field to see 30 patients a day for 10 minutes.
Right.
Nobody, that's not what we were thinking.
Yeah.
So people are searching for something new. We've got record numbers of doctors leaving traditional medical systems and going out on their own into private practice.
Yep.
And it's to afford them the ability to operate in a different way. But a lot of people make that leap and they don't have another system to apply. That's where, having done this in sport, in this microcosm where it exists, and had a lot of success there, we can give people a way to practice, a system, a structure to follow, where they're not having to make it up and just go from medicine 2.0 here to faster access to medicine 2.0 here.
Right.
It's real now. Like, we can, let's do it the right way. Also bringing technology out of sport, right? How do we link everybody up? We have those systems to bring data in. How do we create communication? Do physicians know that the RDs are masters in the blood biomarker world?
Yeah.
Right. They're not alone in that fight. There's the things you know, there's the things they know. Very complementary.
Yes.
Right. So how do we link these complementary skill sets that we've seen, because we've built the teams and we've done it? And how do we just assemble these? We've done it through partnerships.
Yeah.
How do we assemble these partnerships and create a system around the individual? And then teach the individual how it's different. So there's so much education, both practitioner and the person who's seeking it out.
Yep.
But everyone's having to do it on their own right now.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you want to buy a mattress and you're going out and buying all the component parts individually. Hard to put that thing together, right? Cheaper, but hard to put it together. Right?
Yes.
So how do you build that for them? And how do you show them how important it is that you have somebody to bring it all together for you?
Yeah.
Right. And so that's our process, is knowing what are the pieces you need to put in place.
Yep.
Knowing who's needed and when. And being able to, in a non-threatening way, let people know when it's time for you to pass off to the next person.
Yes.
No one's ever at zero, but there's a time when you are there, right? Where you are the person, right? And nobody's any more important than the other. It's just when are you the primary person? All underpinned by nutrition, by psychology, and really rooted in intelligent training.
Yeah.
Right? Really just rooted in training, recovery through restorative sleep, optimal brain health, a proactive medicine that's sort of underpinning a lot of these functions, and it really knitting it together.
I mean, that is the high performance model, right?
Exactly right.
Right? Like literally, like, I mean, I love how you describe that. You didn't have to say it, but I mean, that's what it is, right? Like everybody plays their role, but if somebody's in a return to play, hey, the surgeon does their job, right? The PT does their job. Then the strength coach does their job. They all have a role in the process, and some are just prioritized at different times. The other thing that you mentioned that I think that's really important, because you talked about silos, right? And now think about how siloed things are in traditional healthcare, because nobody talks to anybody, right? Like if anything, you're getting maybe another doctor's medical records, right? Or their report versus now trying to really communicate. Now the RD can talk to the MD, right? Or the strength coach can talk to the nutrition, the RD.
Exactly.
Like just bringing people under the umbrella to have better conversations. Like how much more potential do you have for real healthcare versus what we're doing right now?
I tell you, the first client we put through our whole system, we had our first call and we had 3 physicians, an RD, a physical therapist, myself, my wife, who's my co-founder. We're all on there. We're all coming from our perspective. We've got this entire data set in front of us. Everything you can need. Like, so a lot of people will go and get, say, a Prenuvo whole body MRI. They're going to flag everything, right? Because they got one person reading that scan, right?
Yeah.
We've gone with a hospital system. We've got 100 radiologists sort of stacked up behind. And so if there's an issue flagged in your liver, it goes to those specialists, right? And they can say yes or no. But if they flag something, then there's a follow-up. Those follow-ups can take 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. Think of the anxiety if I tell you, oh, maybe you've got cancer in your liver, and you've got to wait 6 weeks just for the follow-up.
Yeah, no thanks.
And then how long until those results come back?
Right.
So the way we put it together, we did every test we could ever want.
Yep.
And we're all sitting there. We've got this whole data set, and it's the first time any of these doctors have sat in a multidisciplinary group with, oh, something with the thyroid here. Oh, well, there's the blood work. No, it's fine.
Yes.
Right? And we're all discussing this one client. We were 2 hours on a call, and like every provider on that call was just like, oh my God, like this is how I want to practice. I've been frustrated in my career, and this was the most enjoyable call that I think I've had in 10 years.
Yeah. Well, okay. I think maybe it takes a little while to get to this point in your career, but there's a level of understanding that you can't know everything, right? Like I want to know all the things, right? I would love to know how to read blood work and rehab every injury and read sports science at a high level. But you do this long enough and you realize just doing my one thing at a high level is a lifelong pursuit.
Yeah.
And so now you don't feel that same need to be world-class at everything, right? And I don't mean that in a negative way. Like you want to know about nutrition, sports science, rehab, all these different things, but you don't have to be the expert because there's another expert right next to you, right? And so you can have these conversations, and then when it's time, hey, rehab person, you do your job. We'll have these communications and these talks, but then when it's go time for me, let me know and I can step in. But I know what you're doing. It just makes everything so much better.
Yeah. I think it's like having a black belt and a couple of purple belts, and then some lower belts, right?
Yes.
There's always going to be crossover where we've got 2 people who are at a pretty high level on either side of the person who's the master.
Yes.
So we can have the conversation.
Yep.
But then it's about defaulting to the person who is the expert and being able to ask questions.
Yes.
Right? Hey, have you thought about this? Because we all, even though we might be a purple belt and you're a black belt, we have a completely different perspective on it.
Yes.
Is the beautiful thing.
Yes.
And when you can query it from not a position of challenge or ego, when you can query that from a genuine curiosity and say, hey, have you looked at it like this? And the guy's like, oh, and because they're a black belt, they can make that make sense. And be like,
Yes.
wow, that makes perfect sense. I've just never thought of it like that.
Yes.
And so that's where cognitive diversity, just in and of itself, me and you cannot have had the same experience.
Right.
We were raised in different countries. We came through different sports. We've had
Yeah.
different careers. We cannot know the same stuff. So if we sit and look at an athlete together, just that diversity alone gives that athlete a better experience.
Yeah.
And so if we've now got professionals from medicine, from training, from nutrition, from rehab, all looking at this person's knee, how can that knee not get better than if just I look at it?
Absolutely.
Right?
I love it.
There's no way.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so as a founder, I would love to just hear, this is a big undertaking. What have been the biggest issues in getting this product or getting your project off the ground? And then how you kind of navigated those to bring Vitality to fruition?
Ooh, man, I tell you what, you spend years and years and years, decades, getting your black belt in one thing, right? We became really good at human performance, really good at the human body, and then really good at building systems. You do not get a black belt. I didn't even get a white belt in building a business.
Right.
Dude,
it's your first day on the mat, bro.
Different.
Welcome to the real world. Yeah, I know.
Oh, and by the way, everyone else has a black belt, it seems. You know?
Yes. Yes.
And they will kick your ass.
Yes.
Dude, it's so hard. Oh my God. Like, it's just, you're not ready until you, I don't know if you're ever ready. You got to go. And you just, the learning on the business side. I never had to sell anything.
No, I know.
No one ever had to pay me directly. It's not like the athlete walked in and wrote me a check every morning.
No.
Right? It's like, you just build the thing and they show up.
Yeah.
And so what we found, a number of things. The limiting factors in building business for me are your knowledge and how quick can you learn? How quick are you willing to learn what you don't know? And develop that humility to know you're an expert here, you know absolutely nothing here.
Yes. Yes.
And then your psychology. All of your stuff, all of your patterns and conditioning from childhood and growing up and career, all of your biases through which you view the world, you project every one of them into your business.
Yeah.
Me and Michelle going to therapy together.
Yeah.
Every single week through this process so that we can both work together, be founders together, as well as exist within a very, very healthy, thriving marriage.
Sure.
But then just get our stuff out the way. It puts that on hyperdrive. Like if you have a difficult archetype that you have a difficulty relating with, well, guess what? Like they're either going to be your clients, your vendors, they're somewhere in your business sphere. That is your limiting factor to getting this next thing done. Do the hard thing, do the work, and grow psychologically very, very fast. Otherwise, your business cannot grow at the rate it needs to grow because you are standing in its way. And that was certainly the case with me early on. It took me a couple months to really, not to realize it, but to allow myself to admit it.
Yeah.
That this was just going to be really hard. Like, go and have the difficult conversation. You can't avoid them anymore.
No.
Right? You can't.
Yeah.
It's you.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
And don't complain about that person because you're the GM now, right?
Yes.
You're the guy that you were bitching about before. You got to do the thing.
Yeah.
Right?
I
So
think that's it's such a great viewpoint. And I think, I don't know, because I've worked in pro sports, not at the level you did and not in the capacity that you did. But, I've been there, but I have owned a business for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think at some point as adults, we all have this moment of realization of, hey, wherever we're at in life, it's because of us.
Right.
The second you start or stop projecting and putting it on other people or playing the victim, and you take a step back and you ask, what role have I played in this?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's really liberating. It can be scary.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not going to say it's not overwhelming or scary, but man, it's a liberating moment because you start to realize, hey, everything that I have done here, right, good and bad, is because of me.
Yeah.
And if I can just be reflective of that and honest, then it allows you to really make some big forward jumps, I think.
There's no question. You know, if you get accused of something, where's the truth in it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? Not just reflexively, no.
Yes.
Maybe that person is wrong, right?
Yes.
Maybe there's 99%. What's the 1%?
Absolutely. Yes.
Right? If you're not achieving the sales that you want to achieve, or in your career in pro sport, if you're not getting the results, where's the truth? Where's your role in it? Because it's the only thing you can ultimately change. We spend so much time early in our career trying to change other people that we don't do that. Can't work with the trainer. Trainer's this, trainer's that.
Right.
Well, what does he need?
Yes.
What does he need from you? What are you not putting into that relationship? And it took me a long time to really own that.
Yes.
You know, but here, there's no hiding it. There's no covering it up. Like, you don't pay rent if you don't address it.
That's right. That's right. Okay. I feel like maybe you already answered this, but I'm going to ask it anyway, because I feel like that last answer could be this answer as well. It's my big question. So if you could alter the space-time continuum and give young Jeremy Bettle one piece of advice, what would it be?
God, that is it, man.
Yeah.
Go inside. So much in our career is guided by something maybe we were missing in our youth, in our childhood.
For sure.
Chasing all of this success and external validation, getting all the way to the top. I'll be happy when. Right?
It's dangerous.
It's always the next thing. Always. Yeah. Okay, I got to the NBA, but I'm not in charge of the system. When I'm in charge of the system, but I don't have this freedom. I'll be happy then. And reaching that point in my career when it was never gonna come from outside.
Yeah.
Fulfillment, joy, happiness, vitality was only ever gonna come from in here.
Yes.
And that was the most profound moment in my career, and the work I've been doing for probably, say, close to a decade now is how do I make up for whatever it is that I need, whatever validation I've been seeking through my career and through being a high performer and having success. How do I be okay with me, whether it's there or whether it's not?
Yes.
Right. I think that's been a really challenging thing. You know, you go from top of the world in pro sport and you give all that up, and you're literally starting a business and struggling to pay your rent.
Yes.
How are you still okay? You're still that same person. But nobody's blowing up your phone, right? When you're down here and you're struggling for groceries. So that's the work.
Yeah, I love it. And it is, especially when you tether your self-identity to this, right? To humble yourself and start over. Yeah. It's not easy.
No.
But so much respect for what you're doing, man. Okay.
Appreciate
Last but not least, lightning round. So 4 fairly short questions. Your answer can be as long or short as you like.
Right.
Number 1, I think this is relevant because lots of people that are listening, young coaches, they want to know, what advice would you have for somebody that is young and wants to work in pro sports?
Don't rush. Everyone wants to go finish college, get to pro sport. You need reps, right? Yep. Don't make your first 100 mistakes on professional athletes. The stakes are too high.
Yeah.
Build as much diversity of experience as possible. I love the high school and college mid-major level, where you have to be in charge of 10 different teams. You will see so many things in getting reps and reps and reps with a variety of different athletes that by the time you get to the pros, it'll be easy. It'll almost feel too easy. But get your reps here, because you can't get reps fast enough up here. We're about maintenance of performance levels here. We're not about building athletes here.
Yep.
So go here, build some athletes, learn some stuff, make some mistakes, and then go here.
I love it. I love it. Number 2, favorite part of living in Cali?
God, there's so many things about living here. I can go out and walk my dogs every single day of the year.
That's nice.
Right, I can go
That's
outside, nice. Whether it's hiking, going to the beach, like which I can do in the same afternoon here.
Yeah.
Everything I can do is outside. When I was on the East Coast, every bit of movement I had to do during the winter was inside. That was hard on me. Yeah,
for sure. What kind of dogs do you have? Side question.
Yeah, Frenchie. Now we recently lost our little one, but so we got Frenchie, and we've always had dogs. As long as Michelle and I have been together. So
I love dogs,
and now we've got 2 cats, which I never thought would happen, but I'm a cat dad now.
I love it, man. I love it. You're diverse in your creatures at home.
Exactly.
Okay, number 3. What was your favorite pro sports city to live in?
Oh, difficult one. Toronto.
Yeah. Why?
Yeah.
It's cold there.
So cold. And you said sports city, right?
Yeah.
Hockey in Canada, and specifically the Maple Leafs, is so
true.
Big. Yeah. I had no idea how big it was until I got there, which is probably a good thing. But man, the whole city, it's almost like the nation was behind your team.
Yes.
Everywhere we went, arenas were full. Everywhere.
Yeah.
It actually gave you a really warped view of how well the NHL was doing, because we never played with a spare seat in the house.
Right.
Yeah, and then you go to the Ducks, and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Anaheim, Arizona on a Wednesday night. It's like, okay,
it's like,
you've barely got your whole playing squad there, right?
Right.
So Toronto was just magical. It was unbelievable. And what a time to come in for that organization.
Sure.
Came in with Mike Babcock, Lou Lamoriello, with a lot of buzz around, we're rebuilding this team.
Mm-hmm.
And so with us 3 sort of leading the different components of that organization, we felt like we were giving something to the city. It was magical.
That's cool, man. I love it. Okay, last but not least, number 4. What's next for Jeremy Bettle? I think I know the answer to this, but...
Yeah, continuing to push on changing healthcare.
Yeah,
man, we want to take that system in sport and give it to the world. Right, we want to have more and more and more people having access to this, and so we're spreading the word through our one-on-one clients, through the speaking engagements that I'm now doing, and all these other access points that we're giving people into a proactive, basically a new category of healthcare, which we're calling high performance healthcare.
Yeah.
Right. How do you get into wherever you are in this healthcare system? How do you access high performance healthcare that's the same as LeBron's getting?
Yeah, I love it, man. Well, Jeremy, it's been amazing. I knew this was going to be a great show from the first time we talked, and you definitely delivered. Where can my listeners find out more about you and all the great work that you're doing?
Yeah, so Instagram, Dr. Jeremy Bettle or Vitality Collective. So we've got Insta is Vitality Collective Montecito. And then we're going to be sort of putting out a lot of stuff there. And then vitality-collective.com is our website. That's going to host our podcast, which is going to be released in January, as well as all the writing that we do. So yeah, that's going to be a really good resource for people.
I love it. I'll make sure I get links to all that in the show notes. Go follow Jeremy.
Amazing.
And again, dude, thank you so much for coming on. This is great, brother.
Yeah, Mike, thanks so much. Really enjoyed this.